10 years ago, our city was tested. Our hearts were broken. But in our darkest hour, we came together, united as one Boston, to find justice, to mourn, to heal. Now, 10 years later, we reflect on what we've learned, how in the face of tragedy, we found hope, we found strength, we found ingenuity, we found each other. 10 years later, we are still strong.
Hello, and thank you for being with us as we remember that horrific attack on Boston. But we're also here to celebrate how far we've come 10 years later. I'm David Wade.
And I'm Lisa Hughes. We're just days from this year's Boston Marathon. The anticipation begins in Hopkinton. Monday morning, roughly 30,000 runners will trample this freshly painted landmark, making their own history on a course steeped in tradition.
And of course, 10 years ago, 2 explosions near the finish line shattered our great tradition for a day, and for our time, a sense of security. 3 young people, Martin Richard, Lingzi Liu, and Crystal Campbell, were killed on Boylston Street. And violence also took officers Sean Collier and Dennis Simmons. Nearly 300 people were injured in the attacks.
But what we saw in the days that followed defined our community more than any act of violence ever could. Resilience, generosity, loyalty, a collective strength we honor 10 years later.
One of the survivors not only battled back, she, with all the courage in the world, trained and ran the marathon herself. Adrienne Haslett sat down with our Kate Merrill to reflect on her own journey.
My life has changed dramatically, for the better.
For Adrienne Haslett, the past 10 years has not only been a challenge, but an education and an evolution.
When everything happened in 2013, I didn't know anything about the Boston Marathon, even though I was living here. And I've come to learn about the marathon through Boston Strong.
Haslett was injured in the blast at the finish line and lost her leg. The professional ballroom dancer had to not only learn to walk again, but move her life forward and survive. She's been open and honest about the struggles and the pain and the setbacks. But in the process, Haslett has become a symbol of strength for an entire city desperately trying to heal.
Whether you acknowledge it or not, you sort of have become the face of Boston Strong.
I've come to realize that that feeling that people have when they are seeing me and wanting to tell me that I've helped them through, I think because I was in front of cameras so early on, I think I just represent a time that was hard and then a time where they moved through it. I never expected the outpouring of love that I've had from Boston. But I am eternally grateful for it, and I don't, you can hear it, I don't really have the words for it.
Haslett and the marathon are now forever linked, which is why in 2016, just 3 years after losing her leg, her goal was to run, a dream she crushed in both 2016 and 2022. But 2023 will not be about the running for her, rather the spirit of the race itself.
This year with the 10-year anniversary, I wanted to be more present on that day. And I know to have the bandwidth to run a marathon and to have the bandwidth to absorb what the 10-year anniversary means.
With the actual anniversary of the bombing falling on Saturday the 15th, her focus that difficult day will be the BAA 5K and crossing that finish line as a reminder to herself about her strength and her resilience.
I think it's going to be really hard. I'm bracing for hard. I've trained hard. It's making it to the start line at all and getting out of bed and making sure I'm there physically and mentally, and trying not to crumble.
A goal that will help make Marathon Monday less about the memories and more about the joy and love of her community.
My plan is to cheer as loud as I can for as long as I can. That's definitely the plan, and I'm looking forward to it. The marathon is a joyous event for me.
When you look back, you know, at the last 10 years, what has been sort of the one thing that's gotten you through, the one thing that sort of powered you forward?
You know, I think the biggest thing that's powered me through is gratitude. Gratitude for the Boston Strong community, for the city of Boston, for the Boston Athletic Association, for fellow running community. My gosh, I was not a runner. I was a ballroom dancer. I would never be seen sweating in public, and now I can't wait to throw snot rockets on a Saturday morning. It's crazy how that changes. I think it's gratitude. I am proud that I danced again, and I'm proud that I have run and participated in the existence of the para division, but there is nothing on earth I'm more proud of or grateful for than the ability to learn to walk again.
Now, Heather Abbott was badly injured in the second blast and made the decision to have her leg amputated. Since then, she's been helping other people who experience limb loss through the Heather Abbott Foundation. And taking that step made a big difference in her own life.
I think it was a very significant part of my own healing process.
A healing process that involves giving back.
To kind of make sense out of a senseless thing that happened by being able to pay it forward.
Within days of the bombings and the surgery to remove part of her leg, Heather Abbott already seemed determined to look ahead.
I really think I'm going to be able to live my life in a normal way eventually when I get that permanent prosthesis. You want to play?
10 years later, her life is full and rewarding.
What has changed the most?
I never thought I would start a nonprofit, but it's been an unexpected blessing, I think, for me.
A blessing she extends through the Heather Abbott Foundation to fellow amputees like Hillary Miller.
I think that what she's doing for people is amazing. You know, she's really taken a really bad situation and has turned it into something good.
Hillary recently had surgery on the leg doctors removed part of in 2014. Because of tumors in her foot, she'd never worn heels. When Heather made her the foundation's first beneficiary of a prosthetic, getting dressed came with new, beautiful choices.
The insurance doesn't cover any of that extra cosmetic stuff because they don't find it medically necessary. But it is in a way, because the whole psychological and the emotional component of that is huge.
We were all crying that day. It was very emotional. We have a range of components here.
Arthur Graham hired Hillary at Next Step Bionics and Prosthetics in Newton. He says people who can't do what they love because of a prosthetic's limitations can feel they've been injured again, particularly when there are options they can't afford.
If you're looking at something that has an actually powered ankle, so kind of like the powered knee, this is a powered ankle, you could be talking, upwards of $40,000, $50,000. To say to the patient, we can't do that because it's not going to be covered by insurance, it's really hard to have that conversation. Heather's been just wonderful at coming in and providing things that, regular insurance will not cover.
It's a really big part of getting back to your new normal.
So far, the foundation's made it possible for more than 100 people of all ages, all over the country, to embrace their new normal with new prosthetics. Some also turn to Heather as an emotional resource.
Sometimes it can be difficult because it does bring you back to that time when you were in their shoes.
But she's repaying the support she received from veterans in particular.
What have you learned about yourself in the last 10 years that surprised you?
I think I lacked some empathy for people with disabilities before I became one myself. And I don't think I would have said that about myself 10 years ago because I don't think I realized it. But now, being a person that has this significant disability that I can have a choice to make visible or invisible has kind of given me a new perspective.
On a walk with Pearl before this year's Boston Marathon, Heather's looking forward to reunions with fellow survivors, her rescuers, former Patriots player Matt Chatham and his wife Erin, and Heather Abbott Foundation runners, fundraising to give future beneficiaries a chance to live without limits, a gift Heather remembers well.
The woman who was doing the cosmetic work on it said to me that I was a lucky girl. And she was referencing all the different prostheses that they were making for me.
What did you think when she said that?
I remember thinking I didn't feel very lucky, sitting in this chair with amputated leg, but I understand what she meant. Certainly now I do.
Innovations like a lower-cost running foot are making it possible for the foundation to help more people. And on Marathon Monday, Heather's going to be on Boylston Street cheering on her fundraising runners.
And I feel like every single time we see her, she's got a big smile on her face.
She is just beaming.
Unbelievable. Well, when we come back, the legacy of the youngest victim as we celebrate the spirit of Boston, still very much strong.
I think I knew Boston as gritty, tough, hardworking. And you hear it, and then you come here for a really fun weekend, and it's people from outside coming in. and it's just an exciting event. But on that day, we saw gritty, tough, resilient, and it's not just talk or pretense. It's a real thing. And to see that just fire up in an instant was just, I mean, it was interesting and refreshing, and, you know, it made me just kind of buy into the whole place a little bit more. Like, I feel like that's what I identified with here. So, I just walked away feeling like it was very honest and true.
And then in 2014, when we had that spectacular day, what did the 2014 Boston Marathon mean to you, to the running community, to the world?
I think it was the running community taking on that Boston identity. The toughness, the grit, the resilience, the kind of stick it to you attitude. You know, and I loved all that, and I think that was it was built up in the city the weeks leading up, and then it was brought in from the outsiders. And it just felt like everyone was going to be bigger than the bad forces, and it was really special and memorable.
Martin Richard was the youngest victim of the marathon attacks. His playful spirit is always present in a Boston park that now bears his name. It's one of the many contributions to the community made possible by the Martin Richard Foundation.
Well, Martin will forever be 8 years old. His friends and classmates are now 18, old enough to pay tribute to Martin by running the Boston Marathon for Team MR8.
From the start, Team MR8 was all about harnessing a collective power for good and honoring the memory of a kind boy who loved sports.
The goal is always, you know, when something like that and when you lose someone like we lost Martin is to find a way to kind of keep his spirit, his name, his image, you know, kind of with us and with people.
Team MR8's last Boston Marathon was supposed to be in 2020. But when the pandemic forced a virtual race, that big finish felt incomplete. With the 10-year anniversary of the bombings on the horizon, the team began to stir.
There just seemed to be kind of a tug at us to consider one more, given the way that last team ended and given the fact that there will be a lot of attention with the 10-year anniversary. So, you know, we thought it might be a good idea to bring the band together one more time.
With new members who've been waiting for this chance.
When my dad told me that Bill was making a team, we were like, oh, this is perfect.
Nolan Cleary and Martin's two other best friends, Jack Burke and Ava O'Brien, joined the team. An MR8 Youth Board member, Nolan cheered on his dad in MR8's inaugural 2014 race. The shoes Martin gave him when Nolan started playing basketball are a timeless treasure. Like his friends, Martin would be 18. Old enough to run Boston.
Yeah, I just felt it was something I needed to do to really just, I don't know, like finish what I started.
And honor his memory?
Yes.
Me and Martin were like very close. We had a close-knit group of friends in second, third grade and growing up. His message, obviously, no more hurting people, peace. Like, he stood for so much as a little kid. And so now to like run in his memory, to keep it going and to like let the world know.
What is it like to know that his friends are going to be on the marathon team?
It's emotional. Having them run is hard, but exciting. And for these young people to agree to do it, in you know, in Martin's name is really just a testament to who they are, how tight they were with Martin, and how they want to continue to remember him. So it's terrific. It's great.
This memory is motivation.
Running down that street and crossing that finish line, it was awesome.
Henry Richards' 2022 Boston, his first marathon, was a feat and a tribute. Martin's older brother is now team captain, offering this advice to newcomers.
It doesn't matter how much pain you might be in, there are people going to be there to pick you up and carry you the rest of the way.
Their road to Boylston Street began with a kickoff training run at the MR8K.
It's going to be a lot of emotion, I think.
Rachel Moo, now a seasoned marathoner, started running when she joined Team MR8 in 2013. She was Martin's second grade teacher. He made this sign in her class, and she made him a promise.
That when he turned 18, we would run our first marathon together, and 2023 would be the year that we would run together. So I feel like it's very meaningful to be able to fulfill my promise to him.
And we want to wish all those runners the very best on Monday. The Martin Richard Foundation is also making investments in the community through its Challenger Sports campaign for kids of all abilities, Bridge Builders, its annual call to service, and its support for the new clubhouse for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Dorchester.
And I think we'll always remember that sign and always remember those words, no more hurting people.
Words to live by.
Well, this weekend, the Medford High School softball team will be paying tribute to their own fallen teammate. This will be the 10th and final Crystal Campbell softball tournament. The funds raised benefit a scholarship in Crystal's name at UMass Boston.
It's a time where the community really comes together. Our fundraising is amazing. The girls get so excited to play for Crystal in her honor and really represent her legacy.
It just feels really cool being in her spot. Like, I don't know what position she played, but it just feels like a great way to keep doing something that she would have loved.
That tournament is Saturday and Sunday this weekend at Columbus Park in Medford.
Now, when we return, the amazing advancements in prosthetic technology made possible after the marathon bombings, thanks to a survivor and her family.
We have a sense of community here that we don't often acknowledge, we don't often call it up, and we don't often appreciate that sense of community it includes neighborhood, but it goes beyond neighborhood, it goes beyond ethnicity and race and class and all that stuff. There is a sense of connection that is our power, I think. It is our superpower. And it is true of this town, it's true of this region, it's true of this Commonwealth. I feel so proud that everybody brought their best. People who had official roles and regular citizens, they brought their best. You know, it's worth remembering we have that capacity.
Meaningful words from Deval Patrick, the former governor. And staying with that idea of everyone bringing their best, one family turned their own trauma into a source of hope by transforming a field of medicine that hadn't really seen any progress in more than 100 years.
Yeah, they started with determination and a focus on love and healing, and the innovations that followed are life-changing. WBZ's Paula Evans shares the story of the Rennie family of Boston who made their motto, Stepping Strong.
I mean, I would undo that day in a heartbeat, but all of those memories are now flooded with the positivity and the hope of what we've done over the last 10 years.
To see Audrey Rennie smiling at her daughter Jillian is to see a mother who's watched her child from their most difficult day.
It feels like a lifetime ago, but it also feels very raw still.
To a grown woman, transformed and thriving.
I was so fortunate that I was a very naive 18-year-old, and my primary goal was to go to college on time. And now at 28, looking back, I think it was almost a blessing in disguise because it really sort of distracted me from some of the darker elements of what happened.
Standing with her mom and dad near the finish line, Jillian experienced a traumatic injury to both of her legs from the second bomb. Her parents also sustained injuries, but their singular focus was on their girl and the future.
Because you're a very goal-oriented person.
Yes, I
you
am.
wanted to make it to your
I wanted to go to
BB&M
prom.
graduation.
Yes, I wanted to go to prom
You wanted
graduation.
to go to prom.
I think what has propelled me forward the past 10 years as well is setting goals for myself and achieving them.
As a family, one of those goals was reaching out to others.
We have come a long way. I think I also didn't realize until many years later, I thought I was fine. I thought I was healed. And then now that I really am, I'm like, wow, you know, I'm back.
I mean, if you had asked me that day 10 years ago if she would be doing these physical things, I couldn't have envisioned that it would be
No,
possible.
definitely not.
Stepping Strong is the center the family established in Jillian's name at Brigham and Women's Hospital. Amid the pain, the focus was on the future of helping patients with traumatic injuries.
Jillian was the one who led us out of the darkness with that positive attitude, and that's something that we hope to provide other trauma patients.
Without exaggeration, Stepping Strong has not only changed lives, but also changed what could be achieved in this field of medicine.
The very first award that we gave out at the Stepping Strong Center was to Dr. Carty, who had an idea about how to innovate in the amputation space.
In fact, few advancements had been developed since the Civil War until now.
Without the seed funding that was provided by Stepping Strong, which is really the point of the initial Innovator Award, we never would have been able to get our research off the ground.
Dr. Matthew Carty and MIT partnered on this fusion of biology and technology to make patients with amputations feel restored. The brain, the nerves, and the prosthetic are all connected, allowing the patient to react and move more instinctively.
So far, I'm not limited.
Every time we do an operation like Sean's, we are modifying it. We're learning and adjusting.
Sean Melendi is a Coast Guard veteran who lost his hand in a motorcycle accident. Dr. Carty's work on lower limbs through Stepping Strong led to Sean's cutting-edge procedure.
This remains a work in progress, but to see him put on a hand and spin it around and pick up something, that was amazing.
A case so unique, his caregivers at Spalding Rehab could hardly believe it.
Dr. Crandell was my doctor, who was amazing, and he came to me with an original flyer from the Star Wars episode when it first came out, and he said, "Look it, this is you on this page. This is the Luke Skywalker surgery that I thought never would happen, and it wouldn't happen to anybody, and it happened to you."
What is it like to see a patient after the surgery react the way Sean did?
Spiritual experience. To see somebody feel whole again. And we're not totally there yet.
I use this and put this on every day because it makes me feel whole. Not that it makes me look whole, it makes me feel whole.
Feeling whole again, as the Rennies do now.
And just really so appreciative and forever grateful for the unparalleled care that I received at the Brigham. And it really is just the reason why behind everything that we do.
When we started 10 years ago, we didn't really know where we would be going, and it's all we know is that there's a lot more to do in the next 10 years.
Boy, changing so many lives. And I loved her quote when she said, "I'm back." Pretty great.
That strength,
Yeah.
inner strength, it's great.
Well, it is impossible to overstate the role that the medical community played in the weeks and really even the years following the bombings. Many of the survivors went to Spalding Rehab Hospital to prepare for their new lives. The 10th anniversary has inspired two friends to run for Spalding.
Now, Kim Donahue was a new mom when her husband, retired transit police officer Dick Donahue, was gravely wounded in the shootout with the bombers. This year, he's cheering her on in what she says will be her one and only marathon.
It's really hard to train for this.
Kim Donahue's marathon journey is equal parts pain, pride, and purpose.
And when I get to that finish line, somehow there'll be some slice of good from everything that was taken from us 10 years ago.
When her husband Dick almost died, he was the MBTA transit officer shot in the leg in the gunfight with the Tsarnaev brothers.
I remember every day thinking, if he wakes up, we're gonna get through this. If he can just wiggle his fingers, if he can just open his eyes, we can get to whatever that next step is.
After doctors at Mount Auburn Hospital saved his life, that next step felt like one long hill of physical therapy at Spalding Rehab Hospital.
What does Spalding mean to you?
It's tough because I do have somewhat bittersweet memories of here, right?
Spalding Rehab Hospital here in Charlestown opened 12 days after the marathon bombings, and 32 of the survivors from the attacks and the shootout were treated here. Dick was among the last to leave.
I got great care, but it was also some of the worst days, times, challenges that I've ever had.
Pain he describes as 100 out of 10.
It was a challenging 4 weeks, not just for me, but for the people that had to deal with me.
Definitely taught us a huge part of resilience of how we're going to get through every day, and we're going to do it together.
While drawing strength from fellow survivors, other patients, and a whole community of supporters.
Right, and I remember getting a visit here from Teddy Bruschi. Some pretty special things came out of a very tragic situation.
Honoring those special things is at the heart of Kim's effort. She trains with friend and fundraising Race for Rehab teammate Pam Daskalakis.
Just made so much sense to give back as much as I could to the organization that helped them and helped so many others.
Over the months and miles, Pam's been helping Kim train and process grief.
My dad, he was one of the first people up here when Dick was shot.
And he's the person she'll miss most at the finish line.
I lost my dad in February, and so I had thank you. So I have had like a little bit of a setback.
But it will not stop her from achieving her goal.
I always think I have Dick and my kids at home. I've got 3 healthy kids. Like, I just need to keep going.
With a friend who knows how far she's come.
What I say to Kim is really the marathon itself is a celebration of what we've just gone through. In the end, it'll be a beautiful day, no matter what the weather. Awesome. And a celebration of the city.
Dick, a full-time policy researcher with a PhD, will be waiting in the city, heading up their cheering section on Boylston Street.
Our friends, our family, you know, my kids are all excited, so it'll be a good way to celebrate 10 years later.
We should point out the Race for Rehab team started with just 1 runner in 2005. This year, the team is 82 runners strong.
Growing quickly.
Yes.
Well, when we return, a survivor's story told through her poetry.
I was heading into that weekend thinking it was going to be a very somber event. It was an absolutely incredible event. Just seeing the families that came back to the finish line that day to watch the marathon. Survivors, who I will not name, snuck back to the marathon to be at the finish line. Seeing people run down Boylston Street with names of loved ones on it. It was absolutely one of the most amazing days in the city of Boston. You think about how can it be the best with such a tragedy before, but it was the resiliency of our city. And as I often said, you know, that first year after the bombing, we rallied around the victims and the survivors. After that weekend, the victims and survivors rallied around us.
Wow. Well, Megan Zippin crossed the Boston Marathon finish line just as the first bomb exploded. WBZ's Jordan Jagelinzer tells us that Megan's children and her poetry were the medicine that healed her.
Survivors don't write love letters to their bombers. We post lost signs on neighborhood telephone poles. This has to be about trying.
Trying. It's something simple for most of us, something we do every day without really thinking about it. But for Megan Zippin, trying became a method of survival after crossing the Boston Marathon finish line in 2013.
As soon as my foot hit the finish line was when the first explosion happened. When the second one happened, that's when my brain kind of dropped into this space of, like, this is not normal. Something is not okay. Is it going to happen again? And then also like, oh my God, the girls.
The girls, 2 of her closest friends, who just moments before were blowing her kisses on the sidewalk, cheering her on.
I knew they were in the sidewalk. I knew they were in the smoke, but I couldn't see them.
Her friends suffered life-threatening injuries that day. While Zippin didn't have any physical injuries, her life was changed forever. Zippin has struggled with survivor's guilt, PTSD, and severe anxiety since that moment.
If you talk about survivor's guilt, like, it basically was that there was just more people around me to absorb the injuries before they got to me.
She suffered from near daily panic attacks, searching for a path forward.
When the sidewalk blows up that you're walking on, it's hard to walk on the sidewalk and think that it's not going to blow up again.
The first step in Zippin's healing process, delivering a victim impact statement at Johar Tsarnaev's trial right here at Boston Federal Court.
It was important for me to see him.
She says the experience wasn't empowering, but scary and nerve-wracking, having to face someone who harmed not just her, but her loved ones.
One of the things during the trial that I said to the bomber was that one day my husband and I are going to be a better mother and a better father, because we're going to show our kids all that's good in this world.
And that's exactly what the Zippin family has done, welcoming 3 boys into the world, focusing on enjoying the little moments, enjoying the good.
I have a different flavor of joy than I had before the events.
In the last 10 years, she's turned her pain into poetry.
Over the course of about 7 or 8 years in my phone at night, I would just make little notes.
Notes that became not just rhythms, but a source of comfort and therapy when her PTSD manifested at night.
Survivors write love letters. We grow bigger hearts. We feel deeper gratitude.
And you talk about your 3 boys. How do you plan on one day telling them how the bombings changed you?
One day I will tell them that they are the magic that helped turn their mama around.
Her boys, a reminder of life's greatest blessings, giving her the push she needed to be present.
Mama, see the trees in the forest? They blowing. It's so beautiful. Mama, you are my best mama.
3 little angels, the first light to beam through at the end of a dark tunnel.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm here.
Now, Megan finished the race, but a lot of runners were stopped at mile 25 when the explosions went off. And they were all invited to run Boston a year later. And in 2014, the running community turned out for Boston big time. As BAA President and CEO Jack Fleming tells Kate Merrill, the return to the course was a celebration of resilience.
Going back 10 years, what stood out for you first immediately as sort of the response, the community response, the BAA response, just sort of the response of the city and the world immediately following what happened? What do you remember? What is striking to you?
The immediate response and what can we do? The creation, of course, of the idea of the One Fund was just happened almost overnight. If not within the next day.
It was pretty amazing, wasn't it, to watch this unfold right away when, instead of being sort of shell-shocked and panicked, which you would think, how that all happened so quickly.
It was leadership from many quarters of not only the city, but the communities, the Commonwealth, the country, the industry. We hadn't seen anything come together like that.
What has developed over the last 10 years that has made this organization and the race even better because of what happened 10 years ago?
I don't know that there was this idea that it was going to not come back stronger. We feel that there was always a sense that when we get back, and of course we worked with everyone to make sure that 2014, 2015, 2016 became again, and we were sure that it would be a safe family event. I'm not sure whether event is the right word.
I think it's an event.
It's more than a race.
Oh, yeah.
It's more than an event. It's a happening. It's an important moment every year. It's a source of, can be, a source of pride. It can be what, for many, what Boston stands for.
Did it make the BAA even better, do you think? It may be more in tune to the community than it ever was before? Or, what are the changes within this organization as far as maybe taking a step back and saying, this is more than a road race?
We were individually the recipients of so much of the community's support, love, really, our volunteers, and we wanted to repay that. We wanted to do our part in repaying that. So yeah, over the century plus, 127 years in 2023, we've evolved. as an event, as a race, as a city. It's more than a marathon. It's more than just running. Thinking right now of not only the tremendous competition and participation from wheelchair racers, but hand cyclists and those in para-athletic divisions and other adaptive programs, duos, visually impaired, those with upper limb impairments, lower limb impairments. And we're still on that journey. We have more to do there.
This year on Marathon Monday, can you talk about this sort of balance of remembering but also the joyfulness that is the Boston Marathon, how you strike that balance?
April the 15th is always going to be that special day. And whatever date that Patriots Day, Marathon Monday falls on, there's so much going on, right? And there is so much room to not only reflect, not only remember, not only think about the city and this entire region's resilience, think about how far we've come, but dare I say, celebrate everyone who is putting forth the effort on the road, on the streets.
And there is a great celebration. The Red Sox are part of every Patriots Day.
And when we come back, the former Sox players who are taking part in this year's marathon.
This jersey that we wear today, it doesn't say Red Sox. It say Boston. This is our city. And nobody gonna dictate our freedom. Stay strong. Thank you.
Legitimately just got chills seeing that again. An iconic moment. The Red Sox really helping to heal the city and capping it with the World Series title that year.
This year, Big Papi is the Grand Marshal for the Boston Marathon, and WBZ's Dan Roach tells us former Sox pitcher Ryan Dempster is going to be hitting the road.
Ryan Dempster pitched in the big leagues for 16 years for 5 different teams. His final and only season in Boston was 2013. 10 years later, that 1 year inspired him to run the Boston Marathon.
I'm super thrilled to be running the Boston Marathon. I started 10 years ago on Patriots Day, on that horrible day of the Boston bombing. And, you know, our team was a part of something really special afterwards with the city to rally around and try and turn some sort of tragedy into triumph.
Yes, Dempster was the starting and winning pitcher on that Patriots Day, a day that forever left an impact. He's running for the Lindsay Lou Foundation.
I want to run to honor and remember all the people who suffered that day, and raise some money for a really special young lady in Lindsay Lou, who even before that was a great person to model yourself after.
Dempster can recall many things from that unforgettable time, including when David Ortiz addressed the Fenway faithful just 5 days after the tragedy.
Walking into the locker room, and you had the mayor, you had the governor, you had the head of Secret Service, you had the head of, you had Special Forces, Navy SEALs, you had military, you had Boston PD, you had Boston Fire, EMT. Our locker room, as you remember, you couldn't move. There was so many people, and in a weird, magical way, it provided this amazing connectivity that we almost felt invincible. Like we had all of these people on our back, and then we get out there, and David, you could tell something was brewing in his head the way he was walking around. He knew he was going to talk. And I remember him saying, "You're not going to want to miss this."
This is our city. And nobody gonna dictate our freedom. Stay strong.
Going out there, and then him, with his speech, I get goosebumps right now just thinking about it. And he just saying all that, not being afraid to drop an F-bomb, and really being passionate about it because it was true.
Dempster and the Sox seemingly carried that emotion all the way to a World Series title, almost like it was meant to be.
Yeah, it really did feel that way. And sometimes you can talk things into existence. So when you talk about it enough, things actually happen. And then you have, the backing of a city, the backing of your fans. It just became this really an unstoppable force. And we felt a lot of responsibility, to be honest with you, to go out there day in, day out and give everything we had, especially after everything that took place on Patriots Day.
And come Monday, Dempster will take that same mindset on the course when he runs in honor of Lindsay Lou.
If I can do great by her name and provide some relief to families who suffered through this and a special moment, then that's what I'm doing it for. And I'm not going to stop, I tell you that. I'm just going to keep going as hard as I can that day.
Something tells me he'll do great, right?
I can't wait to cheer him on.
Well, for almost 2 months after the attacks, a memorial grew in Copley Square. Sneakers, medals, crosses, and a lot of very personal messages.
Yeah, it was a way to share in our moment of grief and show support for everyone who'd been affected. Many of those keepsakes are now housed in the Boston City Archives, where they tell a story of a community coming together.
Normally, street memorials are not something that are collected ever. This was different.
It was a very moving experience. It wasn't something that we typically do here in the archives. These banners were all around the memorial, and pens were left so people could leave their messages. But then you see how the weather affected these banners, but it kind of makes it kind of pretty.
Everybody wanted to leave a message. People would sign the entire surface of the poster, and when that was filled, they'd turn it around and they'd fill it again.
The first time that we went down to the site, one of the things that we brought back was this teddy bear. A very simple message from a little kid left there. Dear little boy, I am so sorry that you are in heaven. My sister and I just wanted to give you a little gift to show you how sorry we are. From Isabel and Ava.
It could be emotional. I can't read that teddy bear note without dissolving in sadness. People from all over the world wanted to send messages to the city. Classrooms in different places would they'd have the kids write letters. You are in our thoughts. And all the children signed.
I think having these items available in 25 years, 50 years from now, people can see how people express their sorrow, their concern for others.
It's an extraordinary event in that it generated such emotion, and it pulled so many people together, united the entire community.
And just looking back at that time, it brings back so many of the emotions and how painful it was. And yet, what will always stick with me is the way that people came together and how strong we are. And I've never been more proud to live here.
Even over this past hour, we've had some smiles to see how far people have come.
Yeah.
The survivors have come, and the pain as well of knowing what families are going through who lost loved ones. And you said it, up until then, we were Bostonians and we were proud of it. After that, we really were one big family.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining us for this celebration.
And to all of the runners and spectators on Monday, have a wonderful day. We'll look forward to seeing you.
You got this.